Okay, this is a 2007 Softail. The compensator sprocket is bad. This is the first year of the 96-inch motor, and they were released with the 88-inch compensator sprocket. So all the 2007 Softails have a bad compensator sprocket, and it slowly gets worse and worse. You can start to hear a bang when you start it up, and it gets worse and worse. And if you don't replace it, something bad's gonna happen. The compensator sprocket absorbs the torque from the motor, so it's like a soft start, so it doesn't put a lot of stress on the transmission and the driveline components. So I've replaced a couple of these. You think I would have known by now not to buy another 2007, but oh well. So it's really not that difficult, and the dealerships really rip you off. So I'm just going to go through it as I do it, and hopefully you'll be able to do it too. The first thing is just to disconnect the battery, and then if you can drain the primary overnight, it would help out a little bit. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll put tinfoil underneath the frame and have it sort of funnel into a pan, but that's already done. So the next thing I'm going to do is take the tensioner off. The next thing is to take the tensioner off, put a cable tie on it to hold it together, and you just remove it. Slide it out of the way. Alright, next thing to do is to break free the jam nut. Put some slack on it, and then you gotta take out the snap ring. Very easily. And slide the adjuster out. Set that aside. The clutch nut is 1 3/16. It's reverse threaded. Plus, you need the primary locking tool. Harley usually has them in stock. I think they're like $12, but without it, it's a bitch. I mean, maybe you could use a block of wood or something, but this plastic one that I have is probably like 10 years old. It lasts forever. I'm not going to take it all the way out. I'm just going to loosen it so it's almost just grabbing a couple threads so the whole drum can move back and forth. And then we'll start on the other side. Okay, so you put the primary locking tool in there again. And this is just regular threads. This is the spring pack on the standard 88-inch compensator sprocket. These are Bellevue washers. They're about 4-inch diameter, and these are what they're going to be replaced with. This will provide the spring tension. I mean, these things are massive, massive. And when you tighten them up, those things flatten out. Massive improvement over this little dinky crap here. The rotor assembly, this whole thing has to come off, and there's a lip here. In the past, I have ground this lip out because this has to be replaced with the new one. The coil pack assembly here is welded to the old assembly. So in the old days, I have ground this out, put tin foil all over everything, grind it out, vacuum it out, clean it out, and then you can just take this whole thing off without taking the inner primary off. But I'm just going to take the inner primary off. It looks a lot easier. So I do have to remove the clutch assembly, which is, it all comes off as one piece. I'm going to take that off right now and then unbolt the inner primary. Back to grinding off this lip. I actually saw a video on that. A guy named Beaner did that. So that's why I copied him. But I don't think it's necessary this time. I think that's when you're trying to cut corners, maybe time constraints, maybe you're on the road. Alright, the next thing is to just take all the bolts off the inner primary. In the older Softails, there's a lot more bolts, so this is a lot simpler. The next thing to do, the oil tank is out of this thing because it's going out to be powder coated. So if you have a tool like this is a modified extension. You can do this. If you have a tool like this, you can do this with the oil tank in. And basically what you do is you unbolt, take the bolts out, and just leave the starter right where it's sitting. And then you can take the inner primary out. So it's just easier, you know, I'm lucky because the oil tank's out. It makes it a lot easier. It is a fucking pain in the ass if you do not have a modified tool like this, which is about a 12-inch extension with a, I don't know what size Allen wrench this is, 5/16, I think. So you need that. Now with the starter bolts, it should come out pretty easy. You just gotta play around with it, and that's it. The next thing to do is to take the rotor off. It is magnetic. It's a little bit of a bitch because everything's coated in oil, but if you pull it, it comes right off. Magnet. It's part of the alternator. And then put the new one on. So then you put a new inner primary gasket on, and then put the inner primary back on. Inner primary gasket only goes on one way. It's got little locator tabs. So in two places, one down here also. So it's located, it only goes in one way, and it's all set. Clean off the end of the starter, clean it off and put fresh grease around there. Plus there's this like race here that the inner primary bearing and seal go on. So you want to make sure that's clean and greased so it slides right on. And there's two alignment pins for the starter. Sometimes they have a tendency to fall out, so they might be sitting under your motorcycle right now. Like this one is real loose. This one fell out on me, but just make sure you put those back in before you put the inner primary back on. Here's another shot of the difference in the spring pack from the old 88-inch compensator to the new Screamin' Eagle. Freaking massive difference. I've heard people have had good luck with the Baker compensators. I've never had any luck getting them. They produce limited quantities. Sometimes you have to wait for them, and usually the Harley dealer will have the Screamin' Eagle one in stock. They are expensive though. I think this was $470, and the Baker is like $500 and some change. And the Screamin' Eagle, if you don't need it right away, if you can order it, a lot of the Midwestern Harley dealers sell this thing for like $100 cheaper than what I paid for it, but I wanted it right away, so the dealer is right down the road from my house, so I've used the Screamin' Eagle ones before. They work fine. Big improvement, as you can see, from the 88. The next thing I'm going to do is put the clutch assembly back on the transmission shaft. It's a good idea to clean the threads. It's got red Loctite on them, so I'm going to take a pick or a wire brush and just gently clean the threads and then wipe it with alcohol and clean out the inside of the nut also, it looks pretty good. And then I'll put the, after that's done, I'll put the clutch assembly back on the input shaft to the transmission. Back in, I put the nut on with just 1 or 2 threads to hold it in place. You want to be able to move it back and forth. And so I have the shaft extension. The flat side goes towards the back. I put some oil on the shaft too. Then you take the springs, push this all the way up, the springs. There is a diagram with the instructions, so you know that you got it right. Put that on. Then this is the sliding cam. It basically goes like this. So put it on the chain. And it slides in there. There is also a thrust bearing on the end here inside that I pre-greased. I didn't do that on video, but and then it comes with a new bolt. So I'm just going to start that hand tight. The only thing that sort of sucks about this is you need a Torx T70 Torx bit for the new bolt that comes with it. But the next thing I will do is torque it down. Okay, so I torqued both bolts down. I used the primary locking tool. I put red Loctite on the back one. This is reverse threads. And I torqued the 2 bolts down. I guess the next thing to do is probably install the starter, bolt it. Very easy for me, obviously, because the oil tank is out. Very difficult if the oil tank is in, but it's possible. I have done it before if you have the right tool. So the next thing I would say is the adjuster for the clutch. You're gonna have to readjust the clutch. I do not have a clutch cable on this. This bike is far from being ready to ride, so I'm just gonna install it. But I'm not gonna adjust it right now. And then the chain tensioner. This also has 2 spacers on the back. I've seen some that do not have these, but make sure you don't lose them. I cleaned out the holes. I'm basically just gonna bolt this in. I think it's 22 foot-pounds. And once it's installed, I will cut the cable tie. Clean the gasket surfaces, put a new gasket on it. And I think that's basically it. I'm not going to install this right now because I just want to clean it up a little bit first. But it's really not that difficult of a job. It does require a couple tools like the T70 Torx bit and the primary locking tool. And you need to have a torque wrench. But other than that, it's in everybody's wheelhouse and it's going to run so much better. So good luck. One last thing I forgot is there's an oil deflector. I'm sure I forgot quite a few things, but there's this oil deflector that you have to epoxy to the inside of the primary cover. And I guess it's supposed to help oil that's being flung off the chain. deflects the oil back to the center of the compensator. Probably, I'm guessing, towards the thrust washer, that the thrust bearing that is now there, which should help with smoother operation. So it's pretty simple, just clean it off well, and then I use my own two-stage epoxy, something like a JV weld, or you can buy what Harley recommends. They sell a tube of something, a Loctite product that you have to purchase separately, just so you know. Good luck.